Hey everybody, welcome back to Top Ends with Twins. This is Paul. Luke, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Looking forward to an upcoming double game week in Gameweek 34, which was right around this upcoming weekend. So really excited to kind of talk about that, dive into it, and also cover some of the Champions League implications from the past couple of days. So lots to cover, lots to get into. But, overall I'm doing good. How about you, Paul?
A lot of depresso, man.
Depresso.
More espresso.
You need more espresso for that depresso.
Yesterday was a tough day with the Champions League, really. I mean, it's just disappointing for Arsenal. They've had such a good run this year, and it's just the wheels have kind of fallen off, I think, the last 2 weeks because I think people are just worn down. They're not really able to attack with the same fluidity they were midway through the season when they made that really good run. So it's a little upsetting, but it's all right. I think it's kind of not to be expected, but it's part of it, It's part of it. And then City also losing to Real sucks, but
from a selfish perspective, I think I would have loved to see Manchester City versus Arsenal and having that be the semifinal that we got, because if you think about two back-to-back legs of Arsenal and City while competing for the Premier League title, that just would have been some blockbuster matchup. That's really what it would have been at the end of the day, but unfortunately it didn't play out like that.
It really has shades of the Clásicos that Spain that one season, I think maybe it was 2008, whenever Real and Barca played, I think like 4 times within like 30 days, something like that.
I think it was more than that. I think they played
5.
It was at least. I think it was at least 5. I'll look it up.
There's a Netflix documentary.
Keep going though.
But, yeah, it would have been really cool, just as a Premier League fan, as an Arsenal fan, to have the City Arsenal matchup, like Luke said, with the Premier League title going on. But that's also part of it, guys. There's the hope, the joy, and then there's also the despair and the depression of being a football fan. So we want to feel it all. That's why we're here. So. Like I said, it's completely part of it.
It is a part of it. But ultimately, right, I think we're at this very kind of tail end of the FPL season. And a lot of people still have their chips, right? There's still wild cards to play, bench boosts, free hits, even maybe some triple captains to be played. So there's a lot that we need to cover going into this episode. So stick around and we'll be sure to give you kind of our perspective on what you can do with the wild card, what you can do with the free hit, weeks to target for your bench boost, and then maybe even a triple captain usage. So we can cover all of those during this pod. But I think we'll take a little break here and then come right back and dive into how to use those chips, and then follow up with some talk on what we think the implications are of the Champions League fallout for, primarily Arsenal and Man City.
Yeah. All right. We'll be right back, guys. All right, everybody. Welcome back to Top Ends with Twins. We're going to kind of dive into some different chip strategies going forward. And I think at this point, most people will probably have their wild card, free hit, and bench boost available. So I think we're going to focus on those. I, being a silly FPL manager, have all my chips available. And at this point, it feels like maybe there's not a point, maybe there is, but I can always raise my rank. I'm probably out of it in my mini leagues, but you never know. I mean, with all 4 chips available, there's a chance. Maybe, Luke.
If you get every single one right, you might be able to catch up to us. We'll see. I think our mini league is probably locked in at this point for who's winning.
Yeah.
Which, is what it is. There's not too much we can do, but we can try to gain an overall rank, maybe jockey for position within the mini league, see how we finish. But as you said, Paul, with all those chips remaining, it does come down to wanting to use those chips wisely, plan them out, and have a good path forward for how you want to apply those. So when you're looking at this, what are some weeks that you think you'll target for your bench boost, your free hit, maybe a wild card? How are you thinking through that process at the moment?
So I got myself in a little bit of a sticky situation, and as we usually talk about in this pod.
Sounds like a normal Tuesday night for you.
Shh. But anyways, I got myself in a bad situation with my team where I thought in 33.
Quick shout, Sticky Situation, good name for a band.
Okay.
Just saying.
Not bad. But I thought my game week 33 team looked really good. So I was totally in on not wild carding. So I held my wild card in 33, and then I was going to use it in 34, which I'm considering doing right now. But ideally for me, because I have all 4 chips available, and there's what?
Running out of weeks.
I'm running out of weeks. There's 5 weeks left. Yeah, 5 weeks left. So at the end of the day, it's I don't know how I'll be able to maximize all this, because I love the idea of wild carding into a bench boost so that you can just maximize your whole team for a double game week, which is what maybe I'll still do that in 36 and 37. But I kind of hate my team setup right now, so I could free hit in 34. I'm kind of maybe talking myself into that, possibly. Don't know. But ideally at this point, I have to change things. That's the whole summation of that.
Yeah. So I think there's lots of different ways to look at it. You could, for example, go ahead and wildcard this week, which I think is a pretty good idea, because from that perspective, what you can do is wildcard now, get in the players you want to for this double, and then from there you can also pick the players you want for 37 when teams are doubling as well. Mm-hmm. But then that also leaves you the flexibility of using your free hit in 38 for the final week, where you can target those teams that we know will definitely be competing and not on the beach, not thinking about when they're going to go on vacation. So it's something to keep in mind, that having that chip free hit for 38, I think, is extremely useful, and it really allows you to be very specific on the final day when you're chasing rank, or exactly what teams you want to target. If you want to triple up on, say, Liverpool, Arsenal, and City, because all 3 are still competing for the title, then that's a great way to use that chip.
Yeah,
right.
I agree.
And then you can put in some differentials there around those 9. Something to keep in mind. But from my perspective, I think currently what my plan is, I'm going to free hit in 34. That free hit, I think, feels right to me. It feels right to my team. I will wildcard in 35. And then following that, bench boost in 37 to maximize that window there for the teams that are going to be doubling in 37. And just so that we have it established very clear, there are going to be 6 teams. Oh, wait, no, 8.
No, it's 8.
8 teams that are, 8 teams, I can't count. 8 teams that are doubling in game week 34. We have Arsenal with the Wolves away and Chelsea at home. Crystal Palace with West Ham at home and Newcastle at home. Liverpool with Fulham away, Everton away. Bournemouth, Villa away, Wolves away. Everton with Forest at home, Liverpool at home. And then for the final 2, we have Sheffield with Burnley at home and Manchester United away. And closing out with Wolves with Arsenal at home and Bournemouth at home. So there's some very interesting fixtures mixed in there that I think we kind of need to talk through here as we're kind of going through the podcast.
Yeah.
So looking at those doubles, Paul, what teams pop out to you as teams you'd want to be doubling or tripling up on for their doubles for 34?
It's really interesting to me, but I think Crystal Palace. I wouldn't say double or triple up, but I think any free hit or wild card without Eze in there is a miss to me at this point.
You're not saying anything crazy. There are people advocating.
For sure should be in there.
There are people advocating for having 5 Crystal Palace players if you could.
So the reason it's really why I say that though is because you would think, like, looking at it on face value of a double from Liverpool and Arsenal this week, you would think that it would just be okay for sure 6 assets between both those teams. 3 and 3. But at this point right now, there's questions around Salah. There's questions around Saka. There's questions around Darwin. It just feels like those assets aren't really returning at this point. And in saying that, there's a possibility that Saka could have a hat trick and a hat trick against Wolves and a goal against Chelsea. It's very possible. But if you look at the numbers, may be lying a little bit about Salah. But if you watch him just on the eye test, he's basically been uninvolved.
Not even just uninvolved. I think ineffective is the main thing. Because if you look at when they played Brighton, for example, I think that was Brighton when they played at home at Anfield. He broke the record for the most shots in a single first half. He had, I believe it was 9.
Like 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago.
But he was in such great positions, and it felt like in the past, anytime he gets those chances, he poaches them, and he's going to finish them. I didn't have any level of confidence that he was going to finish those chances while watching the match, which is a little alarming. And that it seems like that trend has continued. And maybe as he has trended downwards, that has caused Liverpool to trend downwards as well.
I think you could say the exact same thing for Arsenal and Saka, too, at this point. I mean, they just need production out of him, and he just, over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, really hasn't done that much.
Part of the issue is that it feels like with Arsenal, you have this really great defensive solidity, but it's going back to the beginning of the season where you all were lacking that final ball or that lacking putting the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah.
Because with that Villa match, for example, Trossard should put that ball in the back of the net that Martinez ends up making the save on. All he has to do is hit the ball 6 inches to the left, 6 inches higher.
And Emery was even quoted afterwards saying that, like, whenever they lost to City when they went to the Etihad, that at the end of the day, they adjusted for the Arsenal match after that because, I mean, giving up that one goal really changes things, you know? So who knows how that match goes? I mean, Villa were so good in the second half that, I mean, maybe things would have been the same. Who knows? But, I mean, that one goal lead really would have meant a lot. But at the end of the day,
it would have.
We digress.
I agree. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just going to kind of dive into other teams that I think would be interesting from the double perspective. So we covered Crystal Palace, Arsenal, Liverpool. I want to go back to Crystal Palace for 1 second to kind of put a pin in that, because I think Crystal Palace have some assets that, being their differential status where they're currently under 5% owned for a lot of the interesting assets they have, and a good amount of them are under 1% owned. If you get a double-digit haul from one of those players over the length of this double, say you get 2 double-digit hauls from one of those under 1% owned assets, that is a rocket ship for your team right there. And then on top of that, if you captain, let's say, Salah or Saka and get 2 or 3 goals, you're guaranteed a green arrow there. Because I think captaincy this week is going to be very difficult. And I also think it's going to be spread out.
Yeah.
I think people are going to be looking to gain rank, but also looking for those, kind of diamonds in the rough where they can really have that explosive gain. So it's something to keep in mind with Crystal Palace, that these assets could be great for you if you're looking for that high upside. If you're chasing, if you're trying to catch mini league rivals, Crystal Palace is one of the best teams, I think, in order to do that.
They look like a different team under Glasner, really.
I'm
like
not
we always
sure.
talk about, when they have Elise and Eze, it's just a light years different, you know?
Jared Bowen's back in training now. I think he's playing in their Europa League match against Bayer Leverkusen in the second leg. So I think he'll be playing in that. I don't know if we'll see him against Crystal Palace on the weekend. That is yet to be known, because I think they are prioritizing trying to come back in their Europa League tie. I don't think they're going to have much luck, frankly, just because Leverkusen is Leverkusen. But you never know. I think that's kind of how West Ham are going to approach it. Try to get an early goal and then see where you can go from there. So the next team that I think is kind of interesting on face value, there's 2 teams that there's really 3 teams that seem popular for people to be looking at. Is Wolves.
Yep.
I think that Bournemouth also as well, but that's in the form of really one man, which is Dominique Solanke. And then I actually think Sheffield United is somewhat interesting.
I agree with you, Luke. I think the Burnley matchup and the United matchup are both intriguing matchups from an FPL perspective.
Yeah.
Sheffield have been better.
But they also do seem to coalesce their production into one specific area. And I think if you're going to go with a Sheffield asset, go with the midfield option and DS. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
He seems like he's at the heart of everything they do. And if someone's going to return, if someone's likely to return, it's going to be him.
Yeah, I could not agree more. For sure, don't go with a Sheffield defender or goalkeeper.
You never know. You might get a bullet header from a corner that pays off, but
you never know,
it's a very risky move, especially for wild
risky.
card or free hit.
But I love your shout about Wolves, though, because I think Cunha could be a great option for people.
Do you think Cunha is the only option you would go with from Wolves?
Maybe Sarabia. I know Heung-Min Chan's probably back, but I don't know. I feel like this is the point in the FPL season where I've been burned by specific players. I've brought in and brought out, so I'm a little jaded in my mindset, but I think Cunha is probably the best option if I was going to go for Wolves.
Okay. I do like that as well. If you look on Twitter right now or Reddit, I think the primary front three that you see a lot of people building for their wild card or free hit is Mateta, Cunha, and then also Solanke.
That's who I'd have in my front
and those three it's a great front three for the week. I also do think, though, that there's, some interesting players who, like, for example, someone who I think could have a good week is Calvert-Lewin if he's fit enough to play. He did play in the previous match, but actually, let me check that real fast.
I just don't love the Everton fixtures, like playing Nottingham Forest, who's been better lately, and a thriving Gio Reyna.
Yeah, shout out to the young prince who got his first Premier League assist.
I don't know. He took some corners, I think, for Forest, right? He could be a sneaky FPL option. I mean, talk about a differential of a differential.
Yeah, that's a mega differential.
But I don't know. I don't like them playing Forest. I don't really love that matchup for Everton, but I also do not like the Liverpool matchup either. But it's a derby too, so who the hell knows?
Yeah, that is true. Excuse me. It's tough there because I see the derby, and I think that's going to play a big part. And you have both teams competing for a different ends of the table, but there's a lot on the line for both sides.
Yeah, the Everton Force matchup. I mean, honestly, that
I'm thinking more Liverpool Everton in my opinion.
No, I know what you're saying, but like Everton Force, like a Force take 3 points off Everton.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
That's
in that situation. If Force were to take 3 points off Everton, currently they would jump them going from 26 points to 29. And Everton are currently on 27. So you would like to think that Everton are probably going to go into that, if nothing else, saying let's make sure we break even on points and draw. So something to keep in mind there. But I mean, we also do have to remember that Luton, Forest, and Everton are all within 2 points of each other.
Yeah, it's tight at the bottom.
It's very tight at the bottom. Yeah.
So, Luke, if you were and talking about this, we just kind of mentioned the doubles of this week and all the teams participating in that. If you were going to look at teams not doubling this week, is there any teams you'd want to look at?
City would be one. I do think there's going to be a little bit of a post-UCL hangover for them. And I'm not quite sure if Haaland's going to play, right? He came off before the extra time with an injury. He wasn't able to keep going, so that's something to keep on our radars. I think Phil Foden is a great shout for this week. Against Brighton, I think he could have...
It's a great shout for every week.
But it's proven to be correct, right? And they're still pushing.
I'm just playing. Luke.
City are clear 2 points at the top of the table, with Arsenal and Liverpool tied on 71. City sit at 73. This is a great chance for City to not let their foot off the gas and just really turn their primary focus towards the Premier League. And I think they're going to do that. But I do also think they're going to struggle a little bit against Brighton. De Zerbi's going to make it difficult on them.
I'm hoping for a vintage De Zerbi performance.
Don't count on it. Brighton haven't been putting in those this season.
I know.
The important thing, though, is I do think City will probably get 3 points. But I think it's going to be somewhat of a slog, and it's going to take some time for them to, work their way into that match. That's how I see it.
I agree. I also think that Newcastle against Crystal Palace, with the way Isak's been playing, I think Isak, Gordon, even I probably wouldn't go a defender in that matchup, but I think that one could be kind of fun. And then Newcastle have Sheffield next week, and then Burnley. So
yeah, no, Newcastle are one of those teams that FPL managers are going to load up on following 35.
Yeah.
Going into 35, I should be saying, but for 34, because they do just have a single game week against Crystal Palace, who have been better, and it's not at home. That's the most important thing, I think, out of that. I think with Newcastle is just wait a week and then you can start bringing in their assets. The other team there's two teams really that I think have great matchups for single game weeks. Manchester United has Sheffield at home. Bruno Fernandes has been in really great form as of late, getting the penalties that he so thoroughly deserves. And United have looked somewhat better. It's still hard to figure out what is trying to be accomplished there under Ten Hag.
I don't know.
I don't know what system they're trying to play or how he's trying to, grow his players. So that's something that I don't personally understand. I'm sure there's people out there who have theories on it, but in watching United, I just don't see that cohesive system or that progression into a cohesive system.
Yeah.
With that being said, Sheffield at home is a good fixture. I think that we could see some returns from Manchester United players. And if you're going to go with the single week player, I think Manchester United is someone to look at.
Yeah, I think I really like that. I think sneakily before I was playing with wildcards and I was just making transfers in my team this week, I kind of thought about bringing Dallo in.
Wait, you had a point this week where you thought about not wildcarding or free hitting?
A little bit.
How does that make sense?
It doesn't, Luke. I'm telling you, FPL's been wrecking me mentally. So I just, at points this week, earlier in the week before I thought about the wild card, which I probably always was going to wild card, but I kind of played around with the idea of what if I didn't, and I just held it, and that's silly. I'm not doing that because
that is very silly behavior, Paul.
Yeah.
But
yeah, just so everybody knows, my rank has plummeted in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, we're now tied on points exactly.
Yeah, it's very depressing.
It is what it is, though. FPL Blues, they strike, but hopefully you can get some nice green arrows, finish out the season, and hit some targets that you were establishing at the beginning of the season.
Hopefully so.
But the last single game week player I want to highlight is Ollie Watkins. Villa have Bournemouth at home. Watkins got the goal against Arsenal away, and he's been in really hot form as of late. He's putting the ball in the back of the net whenever he gets opportunities. Watkins is not someone we should overlook if you're not free hitting or wildcarding. If you can get him into your team with one transfer, I think it's a great shout because from this run in, they have Bournemouth at home, Chelsea at home, Brighton away, Liverpool at home, and Crystal Palace away. Yeah. All of those matches, I see goals for him or opportunities.
Yeah, I agree. He's, I think this has kind of been a year where Ollie Watkins has kind of finally stepped into the player I think a lot of people expect him to be. I mean, he's found the assist, he's found the goals, and even you can even look at it this year. I mean, he's kind of pushing for the golden boot. So
he has essentially been the Harry Kane of last season, where it is consistent results.
But I think it's a little different, like, because I mean he's had weeks where he's had 3 goals and two assists.
No, it is. It's even better than Harry Kane of last season.
Well, I mean, somewhat. I mean, Harry Kane was like a goal this week, goal next week. It's just that, like, Harry Kane was just like ticking away at the numbers, and Watkins has had a little more because he's had points in the year where he hasn't returned as much.
But currently he sits as the highest point. He's tied with Cole Palmer as the highest point scorer in the game.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. I'm just saying that, like, he has had some droughts this year where, like, he's gone a couple weeks where he hasn't returned.
And that's true, but
that's not that's my whole point. Is Harry Kane did not do that last year.
On the flip side, I feel like he goes at least a goal or assist every 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah. Which I'm more than fine with owning him if I did have him in my team currently, because that upside of knowing, okay, well, he might not have returned, say, in game week 21, but I do feel like he's going to return in 22 or 23.
Yeah.
So there's not many players that we can say that we feel very confident in their ability to return. A lot of these are, a player gets in form, we jump on the bandwagon, try to write it out. But Watkins is one of those players that I think you can just drop him in your team and forget that spot.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we have this discussion sometimes here with FPL where, I think it's kind of like when you're trading stocks, it's better if you don't check stuff, Like legitimate, like if you set a team at the beginning of the year where you were like, with injuries and everything, it's always very hard to predict. But if you simply just made transfers with players that were injured, and you had a squad of 11 players that you really believed in, and you think that they're going to perform over the whole year, I bet you'd see that team does a lot better than a team where you're constantly trading in and out players.
Here's the thing. If you would have started the season with a team that consisted of Palmer, Watkins, Salah, Saka, Son, and then maybe like Gordon, you would easily be top 100K if you did not change your team. Oh, yeah. And you get a couple good defenders in there with a good goalkeeper, you'd be fine. You'd be good to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the funny part about this game too, is that like whenever you really look at it, you can play the game where you don't put that much in, and you can get a lot more out of it than people that put a lot of time in like we do, you know? And that's just part of the nature of the beast, you know?
It is. And everyone has to come up with their own way in which to approach that, because sometimes tinkering does not lead to good outcomes. But also at the same time, if you're putting in that time and effort to look at the underlying data, to watch the matches in close detail, sometimes that can pay out.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
And for example, one of those good examples from this past season is Aït-Nouri with Wolves. Mm-hmm. If you watch the way that Wolves have played with the injuries they had, Aït-Nouri looked like a great asset to own because of the positions he was taking up and how creative he can be. And because I saw that, he ended up being a great asset for my team.
Yeah, I'm not like pushing for people to not watch matches, to not do like research and stuff. I'm just saying that there's a way you could play this game where you don't tinker with your team, with a team you believe in.
Exactly, right. And
there's a million different ways to play this game.
It requires that initial effort to figure out who you think are going to be in the best positions, who's going to be the talisman for their team, and frankly, who's going to have a good season. So that is true, right?
And I mean, I think one of the main points of that too is that, I mean, it's really, I think one of the hardest things in FPL is to try to discern what an FPL asset is this a little 1 or 2 week blip, or is it a sustained run of production? Because I mean, as somebody that's a non-Cole Palmer owner, that's changed my season. It absolutely has.
Yeah.
So, got to find that line better, you know?
You had to bring him up, but Cole Palmer getting 4 goals at home in game week 33 against Everton is certainly going to be one of the bigger results of the week. And if you were someone out there who captained him or even triple captained him, well done. Well done.
Let's put it this way, guys. Cole Palmer had the same amount of points as my whole team last week because I took a -4.
Paul had a rough week last week, everyone. And I will say that my team as well. At the beginning of the game week, whenever the team sheets were revealed, I had Phil Foden starting as my captain. I had Tony starting as my vice captain. And I also had Aït-Nouri starting as well. I did bench Cole Palmer. I'll admit that. But he did come in after those players were benched.
You got lucky with that one.
And the important thing to note as well is I did not get any captaincy points from the week because both Foden and Tony did not make any appearances.
Yeah, we need to talk to FPL about a vice captain.
Yeah, no kidding. Right? If it could fall on Cole Palmer, that would be great for that week.
Goes right to your bench, right?
If we can retroactively do that. I think that kind of covers the doubles. Let me kind of talk through what a free hit team would look like that I think is kind of like template.
Yeah.
Ideal kind of, I've kind of put together a couple of teams here. So the first one, we'll just do one for the sake of time, but the team that I really like the look of at the moment consists of the main teams that we were talking about earlier, which consist of Crystal Palace, Wolves, and then, excuse me, I've got a little cough right now. Primarily, okay, this is the one. Let me see. There's one in here that I thought was better. Dang it, my phone's not wanting to work.
All right, well,
yeah,
Luke's
okay,
doing that.
I got it right here. So the team
I was gonna start singing a song.
Oh, were you? Go right ahead.
Sorry,
then.
the moment passed.
You all missed your moment.
Oh,
dang,
man, darn.
Okay, here's the team that I'm thinking about. In goal, Raya. My 3 defenders would be Ben White, Trent Alexander-Arnold, and Muniz from Crystal Palace, right back.
So my wildcard team is very similar. I'm going to interject real quick. I have Anderson instead of Muniz.
Okay. Yeah. I think any Crystal Palace defender is good amongst Muniz, Mitchell, and Anderson as well. I think all three of those are good
I think
assets.
there's always the chance, too, that Anderson can get a goal. Because, I mean, if you look at him earlier in the season, he had 2 goals on corners. There's always the chance. So hopefully.
But those were bangers. Those were
they were good goals.
Absolute lightning strikes. So
maybe lightning strikes again. So
yeah, you never know.
Go ahead.
In the midfield, I have Diogo Jota, Saka, Salah, Eze, and then I also have Bremerton Diaz with Sheffield.
Yeah, I like that.
So that leaves me a front two of Solanke and Cunha. Part of the debate here, though, that I was having about this specific team is, would I prefer to have Muniz? I cannot say that for some reason. I don't know. Muniz. Do I prefer Muniz in the defensive back line, or do I prefer to bring in Mateta and only play maybe 4 midfielders, or do I go with a 3 forward front? So it's always interchangeable, right? And I think stuff like this is very fluid.
Yeah, I think it just depends on what you really want out of it. But my setup is a 3-4-3.
Okay,
that's what I would go with this week. But I also think there's a discussion too where I think Havertz may be a better FPL option than Saka at this point. But
possibly,
the goals have dried up for Havertz too. So
I also, with Saka, we know what position he's going to play. With Havertz, he could be playing that striker high up on the pitch. He could also drop deeper into almost number 8. And I don't love that I don't know where he's going to play the entire match.
That's very fair.
That's kind of where my concern is. But it does feel like at this point, maybe Saka has a higher upside than Havertz. Oh, I think Havertz has a higher upside, frankly. Sorry. I misspoke there.
I was about to say,
Saka just feels like he's kind of...
The patterns of play really are not helping him, and he's not beating people right now. That's usually where a lot of his stuff comes from, where he just bursts in on that right side.
My question is, every time I watch him, he's limping. I really worry about his overall fitness, and he's going to have to go play in the Euros in the summer, and that's not going to be a break for... he just needs a break.
I agree. I think Arteta has managed it better over the last month and a half, but listen, he has to. It has to slow down eventually because he's...
Maybe we see Saka get benched in one of these games in the double, and then keep him on the bench. If you need to bring him in the second half, bring him in. But
the thing is, though, is even when he's not having the goal scoring ability, he still offers so much stability to Arsenal because they know that if that ball gets played the right wing, he doesn't lose the ball out of possession very often, and he's good at cycling it back.
And he's always a threat with the ball at his feet. He's going to occupy. He always
has 2 defenders.
He's going to occupy multiple defenders and also keep the attention of more than 2 defenders at all times.
Yeah,
just with how talented he is and the threat that he poses.
Yeah. Well, probably enough for Arsenal. I tend to chatter on about Arsenal a little too much, but I don't know. Anything else you want to touch on, Luke?
From the perspective of free hitting, I think I kind of want to have a little discussion here on whether you think it's better to chase upside or play it safe. Do you think if we're going into 34 using your free hit, would you be going very differential or would you be going very safe? And on top of that, is there more upside in playing it safe or in going aggressive?
I think it really depends on where you're at and what you want out of your FPL team going forward. Because if you're in a point where you're chasing right now and you want to maintain where you're at and you're okay, kind of just maintaining, maybe taking maybe a couple chances here and there in the next 5 weeks, you could do that. But if you're sitting around a rank of 500K and you're I just want to end at top 100K this year, you have to take chances. And to me, there's no discussion about it because you can play it like the rest of FPL does, but at the end of the day, you're going to be at the same point you were this week as you were going into this week, after this week. So to me, it really just depends on your difficulty of risk, your degree of risk you want to involve with it. But at the end of the day, I think we have to take swings as FPL managers, really. I think both of us will talk about this. Our favorite transfers this year are transfers that we've taken risks with. And it's not just something where we're like, oh, that's risky, I'm gonna do it. It's like we both had a reason why we made the transfers we made, you know. And it made sense and it played out. So there's also times too where both of us have made transfers that haven't worked out too.
And that's the scary part about it, because if you look at your process building up to making those kind of risky calls, I personally feel like I usually feel good about the calls to the point of that's why I go through it doing it.
Yes.
And the issue being is sometimes we get rewarded by them paying off, sometimes we don't get rewarded, and for whatever reason, the transfer fails. Or, fails is a relative term, but it doesn't ultimately work out. And that's where we have to really kind of do some deeper reflection on what decisions we're making and why we're making those decisions, because ultimately that's how we get better as FPL managers, by kind of developing that innate sense of, is this the right choice for me, or is it not? Mm-hmm. Because ultimately you can follow as many FPL content creators as you want and copy their moves, do exactly what they do if you want. If that's your kind of game, good for you. But if you want to be self-sufficient and figure out how to play this game that fits you best, to where you have the most fun but also are as successful as possible, you have to develop that sense of being able to sort through the information and decide what feels right to you.
Yeah, I mean, it's really what we talk about a lot. I think this year I've gotten a lot better about it. But last year, played the whole game with simply just eye test, really. Didn't really look at numbers that much. And you're more number centric. And this year I've kind of dove more into analyzing the numbers behind what my eyes were telling me, And I think that's a great way to do it. But at the end of the day, if you want to play the game where you just look at numbers and you don't watch the matches, which I don't know who does that, but it's possible, go for it. Play whatever game you want. But at the end of the day, it's a game, And we do this because we enjoy the Premier League, and it just enhances our Premier League experience.
It does.
It does. It really does. But at the end of the day, I think I should do. I can't speak for anybody else. I can't speak for you either. But I need to do a better job of not letting the emotion into it as much.
It's always hard.
Sides of it,
It's always hard, because if you are putting a lot of time into it and effort, and you're thinking about it, you feel like you should be able to make the right choices. Mm-hmm. And whenever we don't, it leads to some tough situations. And the important thing, though, is like you're saying, is to kind of separate that emotion from the end result.
Yeah.
And just more so evaluate your thought process, why you made the choices you did. And if you reflect and say, okay, well, I made this choice with the information I had at the time, and I felt good about it, the result should not, influence how you feel about it at the end of the day.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is always hard to do. It's so much easier said than done.
Yeah.
But we do have to try to do that.
Yeah, it's difficult. It is, but like I said, at the end of the day, it's a game,
One final question for you, Paul, and we will wrap after this. If you are looking at your team that you're going to build for 34, even just broader than that, who do you think is the best captaincy choice for Gameweek 34?
That's so difficult. So in saying all that we discussed about Salah earlier, I think there's a sneaky chance that Salah could have a great 2-run fixture. And I realize the numbers aren't there as much. The eye test isn't telling us, but he just always has the capability, I don't care what form he's in, where he could have a hat trick against Everton and then 2 assists and a goal against Fulham.
So keep going, but I'm going to share some numbers with you.
Okay. I also think, really, Cole Palmer against Arsenal, I realize as an Arsenal fan, I'm not pushing this narrative, but there's always the chance that Cole Palmer is just going to go crazy, So he seems like he's a good default captain to leave for really the rest of the season. Look at Chelsea. They have 2 doubles coming up in 35 and 37, where I don't know. I think so I have a triple captainship left, and I think throwing it on Cole Palmer in 35 or 37 could be a very sneaky triple captain that could pay out huge,
For 35 or 37?
35 and 37.
Which one would you prefer, 35 or 37 for triple captain?
37, no doubt.
Who does Chelsea have for 37?
Forrest and Brighton.
Force and Brighton. Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
that's
but
definitely
also,
good pictures.
I really do think.
Are they at home?
I can't see on Ben Crowell's schedule here. Let me see. So it's in 37. It's Forced away and Brighton away. And then, I mean, at the end of the day, I do think there is a chance that if Holland's not badly hurt, when they play Fulham away and Spurs away in 37, a Holland triple captain, honestly, is not a horrible time to play that chip either.
We do know
37.
that they'll be pushing for the league at that point still.
Yeah,
is what
and
we
goal
think.
differential still in play a little bit too. So,
and, comparatively, City will not have Champions League that they're competing for at that time too. So
exactly.
The benchings and rotation will not be as heavy, which kind of is in our favor.
It is.
And
that is.
From my perspective, though, in looking at the underlying numbers, I don't have them. I can't find my notes that I did earlier. But Salah's underlying numbers have actually been really good. His XG has been one of the top in the Premier League over the past 4 weeks. And that's something that, kind of, it worries me a little bit if I'm not going to captain him. Because, like you said, he could have a very explosive week, which would negatively impact the free hit or wild card that you're doing. Because we want to get captaincy right. If we know there's going to be a massive amount of points on the board, say the average is around 85, 90, if we don't get captaincy right in that situation, it doesn't matter how many points you have in your team.
Yeah, exactly. So the interesting part of this is that Liverpool play Fulham on Sunday at the late game.
Right.
And so I would keep if we're considering capturing Salah, I would keep a close eye on what they do on Thursday afternoon against Atlanta.
Yeah, Atalanta is going to be a tough fixture for them because they're going away, already down 3-0 on the aggregate for their second leg. But you never know. Liverpool have done crazier things.
Yeah, I would honestly, I would just kind of keep an eye on that match because Salah could play 120 minutes possibly. So
also keep an eye on Jota and his minutes played. If he plays over 60 minutes and looks good, I think he'd be someone that I'd be very interested in bringing in for 34.
He's so clinical. I love Jota. I think him and Trossard are very comparable for what they do.
Yeah, I think Jota has more of that goal scorer poacher in him. I think they strike the ball similarly. Trossard a little bit better, but they are somewhat comparable in how they play.
I think for both teams, they're kind of comparable for what they do, But Jota he could be a sneaky shot for this week too, because you're right. If he gets enough minutes and it's not to the point where we're worried about him actually playing this weekend, but if he looks good, there's a chance,
Yeah, there definitely is.
Also, one little quick shout out before we quit. I think there's a chance this weekend that Gakpo starts over Darwin.
Darwin is someone that I do not like for this week. I would avoid him.
He's kind of back to old Darwiz-y. So
yeah, he's had a good season and definitely better than I'm sure a lot of neutrals expected, but not someone that I would be interested in bringing into my team for this week.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, there's West.
Yep. Hey, West, say hi to everyone on the podcast.
Signaling the end of the podcast.
Yes. I think that will do it for us here at Top Ends with Twins. Thank you all so much for joining us for this podcast. If you have any questions about free hit 34, wildcard in 34, how to use your chips for the remainder of the FPL season, please do reach out to us. Reach out to us on Twitter, or Twitter would be the best place to kind of contact us for the time being. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. Paul, any final thoughts for everyone out there?
No, just enjoy the game. Enjoy watching the Premier League matches because we have 5 weeks left, and then we're going to be in the desert for a while. But it's fine. We'll have Euros, we'll have Copa America, so there's going to be a lot of matches to watch. So
it is a little sad that FPL will be gone for a while, but at the same time, everyone enjoy the break.
It's a good break. So
get out on the weekends, do something productive with your time, enjoy that sunlight, and really just have a great time.
Yeah. Well, thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next time, okay?
Yep. Bye, everyone.